Welcome to Spotlight Murders, the show where we crack open the sealed vaults of Hollywood's most chilling mysteries. I'm your host, Kieran Caldwell, and today we're peeling back the glittering facade of fame to uncover the dark truths behind one of the most shocking deaths in entertainment history. It's October 30th, 1993, Halloween weekend in Los Angeles. The Sunset Strip is pulsing with life, and the Viper Room, an elite nightclub part owned by Johnny Depp, is the epicenter of celebrity debauchery. But just before 2 a.m., that electric night takes a deadly turn. A young man stumbles out onto the sidewalk, convulsing, collapsing, and dying in full view of paparazzi, onlookers, and horrified friends. That man was River Phoenix. At just 23 years old, River wasn't just a rising star. He was a generational talent. A child actor turned Oscar-nominated phenom, praised not just for his skill, but for his soul. But the story of his death isn't as clean as the headlines once suggested. It's not just about drugs or the pressure of fame. It's about the undercurrents, those twisted, buried layers of the industry that no one wants to talk about. Because behind the innocent face and soft-spoken interviews was a boy who grew up in a cult. A teenager haunted by trauma, a young man surrounded by enablers and exploiters. And on that final night, the Viper Room became more than just a hotspot. It became the stage for a death that still raises more questions than answers. Some say it was a tragic accident. Others whisper about a cover-up involving powerful figures, mysterious substances, and friends who disappeared when the truth got too close. There are rumors of missing security footage, of calls never made, of silence bought with influence and fear. This isn't just a story about a star who burned too bright. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when Hollywood eats its young and makes sure no one ever knows the full cost. So dim the lights, press play, and join us as we follow the trail of fame, fear, and fatal secrets that led to the death of River Phoenix. Because once you hear what we've uncovered, you'll never walk past the Viper Room the same way again. To understand how River Phoenix ended up dying on a sidewalk outside the Viper Room, we need to understand who he really was, not the carefully crafted public image, but the deeply wounded young man beneath the surface. River Phoenix wasn't just another Hollywood pretty boy. He was the embodiment of everything we wanted to believe about young stardom in the early 90s. Here was a kid who seemed to have it all figured out. A devoted vegetarian since childhood, a passionate environmental activist, and an actor with such raw, authentic talent that critics were already comparing him to James Dean and Marlon Brando. His performances in Stand By Me, My Own Private Idaho, and Running on Empty weren't just acting, they were revelations. When you watched River on screen, you weren't seeing technique. You were seeing truth. His co-stars consistently described him as gentle, wise beyond his years, and possessing an almost otherworldly sensitivity. But here's what the glossy magazine profiles didn't tell you, what the press releases carefully omitted, and what River himself tried desperately to bury. This young man carried scars that ran deeper than anyone could imagine. River Phoenix's story doesn't begin with Hollywood glamour. It begins in the shadowy world of a religious cult called the Children of God, and what happened to him there would haunt him for the rest of his short life. Born in 1970, River was just a toddler when his family became missionaries for this so-called religious group. But the Children of God wasn't just another Christian sect. It was a twisted organization that used religion as a cover for horrific abuse. They promoted what they called radical Christianity, which included communal living and, here's where it gets truly disturbing, sexual practices involving adults and children that they justified as expressions of spiritual love. River later revealed something that should shock us all. He was sexually abused as a young child in this group. In fact, he stated that he lost his virginity at age 4. 4 years old. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just childhood trauma. This was systematic abuse disguised as spiritual practice. The family escaped when River was 7, but you don't just walk away from that kind of early trauma. Child psychologists will tell you that abuse at such a young age fundamentally rewires the brain, affects trust, intimacy, and emotional regulation for life. River tried to repress these memories, tried to build a new identity as the clean-living, morally conscious actor, but the wounds were still there, festering beneath the surface. Friends and biographers noted that despite his success, River carried a profound emotional vulnerability. He was searching for something, perhaps the innocence that was stolen from him, perhaps a way to numb the pain that no amount of professional success could heal. So when we talk about River Phoenix, we're not just talking about a talented actor who made some bad choices one night. We're talking about a young man who spent his entire life trying to outrun demons that were planted in his psyche before he was old enough to understand what was happening to him. October 30th, 1993 started like any other day on a film set, but by evening, the warning signs were already there for anyone paying attention. River was in Utah filming Dark Blood, a psychological thriller that would never be completed. Director George Sluizer noticed something was off immediately. He described River as appearing nebulous, as if he'd only gotten a few hours of sleep. But it was more than just tiredness. There was something almost ethereal about River that day, as if he wasn't quite present. Ed Lockman, the cinematographer, would later recall their final day of filming with an eerie sense of foreboding. After 10 takes of River's soliloquy, he was left with an unsettling image. River silhouetted on camera, a haunting visual that seemed to foreshadow the tragedy to come. That evening, River returned to his hotel room where friends had gathered. Room service staff who delivered food and drinks noted the rowdy music and frenetic atmosphere. But more disturbing was River's demeanor. They described him as spaced out, disconnected from reality. By 10:30 p.m., River requested that the front desk prepare his car. This detail might seem insignificant, but it suggests planning, a destination in mind. He wasn't just randomly wandering into the night. He was heading somewhere specific. As River and his entourage left the Nico Hotel, witnesses described him slumping in the back seat of the car. This wasn't the River Phoenix the world knew, the articulate, passionate activist. This was someone who was already in distress, already battling something internal before he ever set foot in the Viper Room. Their destination was one of the hottest spots on the Sunset Strip, the Viper Room, co-owned by Johnny Depp and Chuck E. Weiss. This wasn't just any nightclub. It was an exclusive, intimate venue known for its star-studded clientele and its anything-goes atmosphere. The kind of place where celebrities could indulge in behaviors they'd never risk in more public venues. When River arrived at the Viper Room, he immediately gravitated toward a familiar face, John Frusciante, the guitarist for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They positioned themselves near Johnny Depp's private booth, toward the back of the club where the lighting was dim and privacy was easier to maintain. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. According to multiple witnesses, River and his group soon encountered drug dealers who escorted him to the men's restroom. In the grimy confines of a nightclub bathroom, far from the cameras and the carefully managed public image, River Phoenix was about to make the decision that would kill him. What happened in the bathroom of the Viper Room at approximately 12:45 a.m. would be River Phoenix's death sentence, and the person who delivered it was someone he considered a friend. According to eyewitness accounts, including testimony from River's then-girlfriend, Samantha Mathis, John Frusciante handed River a cup containing what's known on the street as a speedball, a lethal combination of cocaine and heroin. But this wasn't just any speedball. This was Persian brown heroin mixed with cocaine, an incredibly potent and dangerous combination. Here's the chilling part. Frusciante allegedly encouraged River to drink it, promising that it would make him feel fabulous. But instead of advising caution, instead of suggesting River sip it slowly, witnesses say Frusciante told him to drink it all at once. This instruction transformed what might have been a dangerous experiment into a death sentence. The moment River consumed that liquid, his body went into immediate distress. He began trembling uncontrollably in front of the bathroom sink, and in what may have been his last moment of clarity, he cried out, "What did you give me? What the fuck is in it?" Think about that question for a moment. Here was someone who trusted a friend, someone who believed he was being offered something that would enhance his evening, suddenly realizing that something was terribly wrong. The panic in his voice, captured by witnesses, tells us everything we need to know about River's final conscious moments. Friends tried to help, offering him Valium and cold water, but it was already too late. River vomited and remained deeply unsettled as he made his way toward the bar where Samantha Mathis and his sister Rain were waiting. The club was loud that night. Johnny Depp and others were engaged in a jam session that filled the venue with chaotic noise. In this cacophony, River was struggling to breathe, his body fighting a battle it couldn't win. He passed out momentarily at the bar, and when he briefly regained consciousness, he made what would be his final request. He asked Matisse to take him outside. Here's where the story becomes even more tragic. Samantha. Mathis was reluctant to call for medical assistance because of the drug involvement. This wasn't uncommon in Hollywood circles. There was always the fear that involving paramedics would lead to police involvement, scandals, career destruction. So instead of immediately calling 911, she sought help from friends back at the hotel. With his brother Leaf's support, they guided River toward the club's rear exit, but River Phoenix would never make it back to safety. As they reached the sidewalk on Sunset Boulevard, he collapsed. What happened next was captured by witnesses and would haunt everyone present for the rest of their lives. Just after 1 a.m., beneath the canopy of the Viper Room, River Phoenix suffered his first seizure. And here's a detail that makes this story even more surreal. This was happening just 4 blocks away from where John Belushi had fatally overdosed years earlier. The Strip had claimed another young star. The final 20 minutes of River Phoenix's life played out like a nightmare in full view of Sunset Boulevard, and every detail makes the tragedy more heartbreaking. 2 photographers, Ron Davis and Miranda, were concluding their nightly patrol when they happened upon River convulsing on the sidewalk. When River briefly stirred from his first seizure and saw the photographers with their cameras ready, he managed to utter what would be his last coherent words. "No paparazzi. I want anonymity." Even as he was dying, River was thinking about privacy, about maintaining some dignity in his final moments. It's a request that speaks to both his humanity and the impossible pressure of living life under constant surveillance. The club's doorman urgently called for someone to dial 911, but chaos reigned. River's brother Leaf kept reassuring everyone, and perhaps himself, saying, "He'll be all right, he's fine," trying to honor River's wish for discretion even as his brother's life slipped away. During River's second seizure, his sister Rain appeared on the scene. In a moment of pure desperation, she attempted to stop his convulsions and administered mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Imagine the horror, a young woman watching her brother die on a sidewalk, trying everything she could think of to save him. As the third seizure began, photographer Ron Davis ran to a nearby liquor store to call 911, while Leaf made his own frantic call at 1:10 a.m. The recording of that call is heartbreaking. "My brother's having seizures. You must get here, please. He's dying." Meanwhile, the scene on Sunset Boulevard revealed humanity at its best and worst. Some onlookers stood in shock, genuinely concerned. Others remained disturbingly indifferent to the tragedy unfolding before them. 2 girls in Halloween costumes reportedly looked at River's convulsing body and remarked, "Oh God, gross." But there were also moments of genuine compassion. Actress Christina Applegate emerged from the club, witnessed River's condition, and broke down in tears nearby. These weren't crocodile tears for the cameras. This was raw human emotion in response to watching a young life slip away. When paramedics finally arrived, River was still alive. There was still hope. But despite their best efforts, despite sophisticated attempts to restart his heart, including opening his chest and providing direct cardiac massage, River Phoenix was pronounced dead at 1:51 a.m. at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, roughly 20 minutes after arriving at the emergency room. The irony is devastating. This young man who had spent his life advocating for purity, for clean living, for environmental and social causes, died from a toxic cocktail of drugs on a Hollywood sidewalk. His final hours represented everything he had publicly opposed, yet here he was, another casualty of an industry that chews up its most sensitive souls. The preliminary autopsy, conducted on November 1st, 1993, followed by the comprehensive examination on November 15th, revealed details that were both shocking and heartbreaking. The toxicology results painted a picture of massive drug consumption that seemed almost incompatible with River's public persona. His blood contained several substances, but two stood out in lethal concentrations: cocaine and morphine. The presence of morphine indicated heroin use, as the body converts heroin into morphine. But here's what makes the findings so disturbing. River had 8 times the lethal dose of this speedball combination in his bloodstream. 8 times. This wasn't recreational drug use gone wrong. This was a massive overdose that would have killed almost anyone. The absence of injection marks or nasal residue suggested oral ingestion, which corroborated witness accounts of River drinking a mysterious substance given to him that night. This detail is crucial because it supports the theory that River consumed the drugs in liquid form, exactly as witnesses described. Also found in his system were traces of marijuana, Valium, and common over-the-counter cold medications. Interestingly, there was no alcohol present, a detail that suggests River's intoxication came entirely from illegal substances. Perhaps most intriguingly, the coroner's office mentioned ongoing tests for gamma-hydroxybutyrate, GHB, a drug known for its strong sedative effects and its association with date rape incidents. However, the results of these tests were never definitively released to the public, adding another layer of mystery to an already complex case. Scott Carrier, representing the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, confirmed that both cocaine and morphine played pivotal roles in Phoenix's death. The combination of these stimulants and depressants critically impaired his respiratory function and cardiac performance, triggering the fatal cardiac arrest. The coroner ultimately classified Phoenix's death as accidental, attributing it to acute multiple drug intoxications. No evidence of physical trauma, infections, or pre-existing medical conditions was found. This was purely a case of polydrug toxicity, multiple substances interacting in a way that overwhelmed his system. But here's what's haunting about these findings. They confirmed that River Phoenix, the young man who publicly championed clean living and environmental consciousness, died from a drug combination so potent it would have killed him even if he had been an experienced user. The question that haunted everyone was simple yet profound. How did someone so committed to purity end up with 8 times the lethal dose of street drugs in his system? At the center of the most persistent questions surrounding River Phoenix's death stands John Frusciante, the Red Hot Chili Peppers guitarist whose actions that night have been scrutinized for 3 decades. Multiple witnesses, including Samantha Mathis, have stated that Frusciante was the one who handed River the fatal speedball, encouraging him to drink it with promises that it would make him feel fabulous. But the implications of this action, whether intentional or reckless, have never been fully resolved. Eyewitness Bob Forrest recounted a chilling interaction that highlights just how desperately River needed help in his final hour. According to Forrest, River tapped him on the shoulder at the bar and told him he was overdosing. Think about that moment. A young man knowing he was dying, reaching out for help, and somehow that help never came. What makes Frusciante's role so controversial is the apparent recklessness of his advice. According to witnesses, he didn't just offer River drugs, he specifically instructed him to consume the entire amount at once, rather than sipping it gradually. For someone familiar with drugs, this instruction shows either stunning ignorance of their potency or complete disregard for River's safety. The aftermath reveals the depth of impact this night had on everyone involved. John Phoenix, River's father, expressed rage toward Frusciante that was both understandable and intense. He stated that he would kill Frusciante if they ever found themselves in the same space. The raw emotion of a parent who lost his son to what he saw as another person's reckless act. Yet despite this anger, the Phoenix family chose not to pursue legal action against Frusciante. They determined that legal proceedings would bring little justice or resolution and would only amplify the media circus surrounding their son's death. This decision speaks to their desire to focus on honoring River's memory rather than seeking revenge. Frusciante himself reportedly withdrew from public view following River's death, apparently consumed by guilt over the incident. Those close to him described him as being haunted by that night, and his subsequent battles with his own addiction issues may have been partially fueled by the trauma of watching his actions contribute to a friend's death. In a 2018 interview, Samantha Mathis provided additional details that add to the complexity of the situation. She revealed that during River's consumption of the fatal drink, she was in the bathroom and didn't directly witness Frusciante's involvement. However, when she returned, she found River in a confrontation, and shortly after, discovered him convulsing and being removed by security. The question of Frusciante's intent remains one of the most debated aspects of this case. Was this a thoughtless act driven by youthful recklessness and his own substance abuse issues? Was he simply sharing what he thought was a recreational experience without understanding the lethal dosage? Or was there something more calculated in his actions? Frusciante, battling his own severe addiction problems at the time, may not have fully comprehended the deadly consequences of his actions. Drug users often develop tolerance levels that make it difficult to gauge appropriate doses for others, especially those with less experience. But critics argue that this explanation doesn't excuse the apparent recklessness of instructing someone to consume such a large quantity at once. Over the years, Frusciante has rarely addressed the incident publicly, leaving many questions unanswered. This silence has only fueled more speculation and conspiracy theories about what really happened that night and what his true role might have been. River Phoenix's death occurred at a time when conspiracy theories about Hollywood were beginning to flourish, and the circumstances of his demise provided fertile ground for speculation that continues to this day. The rapid closure of the official investigation troubled many who felt that important questions remained unanswered. While detectives initially considered the possibility of foul play, the case was quickly closed once toxicology results confirmed drug involvement. Critics argued that this expedited conclusion dismissed potential evidence that might have revealed more sinister circumstances. One of the most persistent theories centers on River's passionate environmental advocacy and his increasingly vocal criticism of Hollywood's darker aspects. Some conspiracy theorists suggest that his growing influence and refusal to compromise his principles made him a threat to powerful industry players. These theories propose that his death was orchestrated to silence potential revelations about uncomfortable industry truths and hidden behaviors. The involvement of high-profile figures like Johnny Depp, owner of the Viper Room, and members of the Red Hot Chili Peppers has also fueled speculation. The rapid arrival of paramedics, the presence of these influential friends, and the unusually high drug levels in River's system have led some to suggest he was purposefully targeted or entrapped by those seeking to manipulate or eliminate him. The mysterious status of GHB testing adds another layer to these theories. Early toxicology reports mentioned ongoing tests for this date rape drug, but results were never definitively released to the public. Some theorists believe GHB was administered without River's knowledge, playing a crucial role in his sudden collapse and death. Questions have also been raised about River's entourage that night. Some conspiracy advocates suggest that those accompanying him were either negligent or actively complicit in encouraging his drug use. Media reports highlighting discrepancies in eyewitness accounts and delays in calling emergency services have only strengthened these suspicions. A deeper conspiracy theory connects River's death to a pattern of suspicious Hollywood star deaths. Comparisons are drawn to figures like James Dean and John Belushi, whose early deaths have also been shrouded in speculation. The common thread in these theories is the belief that River, who publicly championed clean living, would never have willingly engaged in such extensive drug use. Some theorists go so far as to suggest that the substances found in his system were misrepresented or that he was deceived about what he was consuming. They point to his panicked question, "What did you give me? What the fuck is in it?" as evidence that he was unaware of what he had taken. The fact that River died just blocks away from where John Belushi had fatally overdosed years earlier has also been seized upon by conspiracy theorists as evidence of a pattern, suggesting that certain locations on the Sunset Strip serve as elimination sites for troublesome celebrities. While none of these conspiracy theories have been substantiated with credible evidence, their persistence reflects the profound impact of River's death on public consciousness. His sudden and tragic end, coupled with his youthful idealism and the tumultuous backdrop of early 1990s Hollywood, continues to generate suspicion and intrigue. The gap between River's public persona and the circumstances of his death creates cognitive dissonance that many find difficult to accept. How does someone so committed to purity and consciousness end up dead from a massive drug overdose? For some, conspiracy theories provide a more palatable explanation than the tragic reality that even the most principled people can fall victim to their deepest wounds and poor decisions. 30 years have passed since River Phoenix died on that sidewalk outside the Viper Room, but the questions surrounding his death refuse to fade away. We know the facts. A young man with a history of childhood trauma, struggling with inner demons he tried desperately to hide, consumed a lethal combination of drugs, and died. We know who was present. We know the timeline. We know the cause of death. But knowing the facts and understanding the truth are two very different things. River Phoenix's story is ultimately about the collision between public image and private pain, between the person we present to the world and the wounds we carry in secret. Here was someone who seemed to embody everything positive about his generation: environmental consciousness, social activism, artistic integrity. Yet he was quietly battling demons planted in his psyche before he was old enough to understand what was happening to him. The tragedy isn't just that River died young. The tragedy is that in an industry filled with people struggling with similar issues, no one was able to reach him in time. The tragedy is that fear of scandal and publicity prevented immediate medical attention. The tragedy is that childhood abuse created vulnerabilities that a lifetime of success couldn't heal. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of River's story is how it reflects broader issues that persist in Hollywood today. The pressure to maintain a perfect public image while privately struggling with trauma. The culture of enabling that surrounds troubled stars. The way the entertainment industry continues to consume its most sensitive souls. River Phoenix died before he could complete Dark Blood, leaving behind an unfinished film that serves as a metaphor for his unfinished life. But his legacy extends far beyond his filmography. His story serves as a warning about the long-term effects of childhood trauma, the dangers of the Hollywood machine, and the price of keeping painful secrets. Today, when we watch River's performances, when we see that raw talent and authentic emotion on screen, we're seeing someone who channeled his deepest pain into art. His vulnerability, the very thing that made him such a compelling actor, was also what made him susceptible to the forces that ultimately destroyed him. The questions about John Frusciante's exact role, about whether there were deeper conspiracies at work, about what might have happened if different choices had been made that night, these questions will probably never be fully answered. But maybe that's not the most important thing. Maybe the most important thing is that we remember River Phoenix not just as a cautionary tale, but as a young man who tried to use his platform for good who struggled with pain he didn't choose, and who died before he could find the healing he deserved. His death reminds us that behind every public figure is a human being with their own struggles, their own wounds, their own need for compassion and understanding. And perhaps, if we can learn to see that humanity more clearly, we can prevent other bright lights from being extinguished too soon. River Phoenix was 23 when he died. He had already given the world unforgettable performances and had years of potential contributions ahead of him. His story ended on a sidewalk in Hollywood, but his impact continues to ripple through the decades, challenging us to be more aware, more compassionate, and more committed to protecting the vulnerable among us. That's his real legacy, not the mystery of his death, but the reminder of how precious and fragile life truly is. You've heard the facts, the theories, and the silence that still echoes from that Hollywood sidewalk. You've seen the cracks in the dream and the ghosts that fame tries to bury. Now, you choose what to believe, but maybe that choice, the choice to keep searching, is the only truth that really matters. If you want to dive deeper into the hidden world of Hollywood's tragedies, cover-ups, and conspiracies, download the Skoob app on the App Store or Google Play to unlock the full experience. Exclusive interviews, documents, and behind-the-scenes content are just a tap away. Thank you for walking this dark road with me. Remember, fame has a spotlight, but the shadows are always bigger. Question the headlines, listen between the silences, and never forget the names behind the stories. Until next time, this has been Spotlight Murders. Stay curious, stay cautious, and don't believe everything they tell you happened that night outside the Viper Room.